Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Dynamically Speaking podcast. Today's episode was recorded live on site at Identiverse over the course of the conference and contains two guest interviews. The first being Roland, the founder of umbrella.associates, and the second, our returning guest, Gerry Gebel, the VP Product and Strategy at Strata Identity. You can find the timestamps for the interviews in the podcast description. So grab a drink and let's get into this. Hello everyone and welcome to a special episode of Dynamically Speaking live from Identiverse. I'm Emme Reichert, the marketing manager at Axiomatics, and in Vegas is our CTO and my co-host David Brossard. Hey David, how's Vegas?
I can't tell you. You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Okay.
Apart from that,
Well-
good.
Well, we're about to break that rule with our podcast, so we also have today with us our special guest, Roland. Hey, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Awesome. Do you want to tell us?
Rolling.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit about
Sorry, Emme.
yourself?
I'm Roland. I'm from Germany, and I'm co-founder and managing director of Umbrella.associates. So we are a boutique consultancy in Germany and only focused on identity and access management in all its aspects. And yes, we are specialized in bigger corporations. So starting from those entities and more. That's always where I say there's the interesting problems.
Cool. So I got a question. What got you to Identiverse? Why Identiverse? Why Vegas?
Well, it's the biggest and most important conference in the industry, so it felt like natural. And the Identiverse and the EIC are our most important conferences. So for me, it's the third time, and it's always interesting. I really love to be in Vegas and the Identiverse because you have so many people from the industry, so many insights and thoughts and interesting discussions. So always think I'm looking forward.
Cool. So third time at Identiverse this year. What is the main topic you see being like headlining all the conferences, all the presentations, the sessions, the keynotes?
Obviously, AI.
AI.
It's getting all over the place. You can see that it started last year, sort of, and this year it's just appearing AI agents inside that. And yeah,
Do you include NHI in AI, or is that another topic, non-human identities? NHI. Do you think it's part of the AI conversation, or is it a separate topic?
well, I know.
Okay.
I know.
And do you see that as a concern?
What?
Any non-human identities? Or is that something you've seen with your customers yet?
I don't see it with my customers yet because it's still a new topic. I think there are so many challenges to solve, but it's always that it's getting a thing and it's getting a challenge.
Okay.
AI bots. Yeah.
So I saw that your co-conspirator and co-founder
Mhm.
presented, I think 2 days ago or yesterday, on the different regulations that we see in Europe.
Yes, this
Right.
is Sebastian's stuff. Yeah.
Sebastian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sebastian Weaver, who is the co-founder, correct?
Yeah.
Of Umbrella Associates. And I went there because on his title it said Dora. I was expecting to see Dora the Explorer, but it wasn't that. What is Dora? What are the European regulations?
Well, it's a regulation about securing the industry. So critical infrastructure and critical industries, they get more regulation to harden their systems to do identity and access management. And yeah,
Okay.
just another regulation.
Do they help when the regulations? Do they guide your customers, or is it more of a headache for them? Then they ask you.
It's sort of a headache for them because they get nervous. Another regulation, you have to do this and that. But in the end, if you're doing ISO or the other frameworks, in the end, it's nearly the same. It's about your risk management and
Okay.
certain aspects of risk management.
Okay. So I want to go back to, and Emme, I'm sorry, I'm taking up all the questions, but feel free to, you know me, Emme. I want to go back to the number one topic you said you were seeing at Identiverse and same with last year, AI. What part of AI, if any, is the one that's taken out the most? And this is an identity conference. So how does that relate to identity?
Well, AI and especially AI bots, will more and more be sort of an agent. So they act on your behalf, they book a ticket or do a reservation on your behalf. So it will be a challenge to have those agents not getting my credentials, but permissions and tokens and stuff like that to act on my behalf and do things, and doing this in a secure manner. And this is a challenge.
Okay. Is it because today they don't really either don't have an identity themselves, or we need to figure out how to carry the end user identity? Is it technical issues? Is it like architectural issues, or even like just more like processes that we need to think, or all of the above?
Good question. I think it's a mixture of all.
Yeah.
So I think having a secure method to giving an AI bot permissions to do something on my behalf, having the technical protocols to do that, authentication, authorization, especially, and limiting the capabilities that what the bot is doing, and that's a holistic challenge, I would say, on the technical side, on the operational side, but also on the human side, because we are getting things to AI bots, and they are doing stuff on behalf of us with a much more quicker than we do. So monitoring those bots and securing their actions and their transactions will be a technical challenge, but also I think personal challenge for users.
Are you worried or excited? Yeah.
I'm excited about the development because it's interesting. It's a challenge. But yeah, we'll see how this where this will lead us to.
And your customers, I guess, they're from multiple verticals, multiple industries. Are they already using AI? Are they thinking about using AI? Are they using agentic AI already? What's their level of maturity, and do they think about all the pitfalls, or is that where you are and you're holding their hand and saying you got to worry about this and that?
Well, currently, not a lot of our customers are using AI and agentic AI, but I think this will be getting more and more. And yeah, we will see which discussions will come out with our customers.
Cool. So you mentioned a word that Emme and I really like: authorization. Yeah. What in your mind, not necessarily specifically in the light of AI, but what in your mind is the key difference between authentication and authorization? Like, how would you help people understand the difference?
Well, authentication is about proving who you are, and authorization is defining what you can do.
Yep.
At the moment, you are identified and verified. So it's about permissions in the end. And the first thing is about identification.
So when we know who you are, we need to determine what you can do. And then you mentioned access delegation, right? Or acting on behalf of. I can think of one standard in that space, and that's OAuth, right? I believe Aaron Parecki, who's one of the OAuth gurus, has been writing quite a bit on how to apply OAuth to MCP. MCP is one of the new buzzwords, right? I keep forgetting what it stands for. Model Context Protocol?
So that.
Yeah, something like that.
I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I need to read Aaron's spec.
Yeah, same.
But in there, it's actually quite interesting. And this is a shout out to people not in the IAM space. The people behind MCP, they've been writing how to use OAuth on top of MCP. Aaron is now sort of writing back and saying, this is actually how you have to use OAuth from the OAuth point of view on MCP. So I think this is how we're going to be tackling access delegation for agents, for MCP and then agents for ADA.
And we haven't even talked about authorization for AI agents. So we are just talking about the delegation of the user's credentials or permissions of the user to an AI agent. But currently in the authorization space, we are just talking about getting external authorization, externalized, getting standards in the interfaces between the applications. But we didn't even start talking about permissions and authorization for agents, right? which are acting on behalf of us. And I think for vendors and customers, this would also be important not only to know that there is a user, there's an AI agent that is acting on behalf of the user, but maybe because of that, limiting the permission, not of the user, but of the agent.
Yeah.
So it's really another challenge.
Yeah, and another challenge is we're getting a lot of noise from the show floor. As you can see, we're right here in the middle of Identiverse. So apologies to our speakers. For those of you who have ASMR, it's a great experience. For the others, no. So what Roland was pointing out is that it's not just about access delegation, right? So yes, the user, I want to tell my agent, I'm going to allow you to book a plane ticket up to say 500 euros or $500, right? So that's the delegation piece. But beyond that, you also want to control what AI as a whole can do on the data, or whether an agent can even access the travel system, in my example, regardless of access delegation. Yeah. And I saw a presentation yesterday, I don't know if you were in there, where the person was saying, oh, we also need to worry about authorization on the results of AI. So this is not necessarily agent AI, it's more just regular AI, RAG AI potentially. So you see that as well with your customers?
Not with my customers, but as a discussion in the industry. Yeah. So last year I had the chance to be at a conference in Germany, in Frankfurt, and there was a real interesting demonstration where they had an AI agent acting on I think it was an Elastic-based database. And the thing was that the user had no permission to access the data itself, but there was an AI agent in between who you can talk to. And the agent was like, yes, I can't give you access to that data, but I can answer you about questions. So tell me questions and I will digest them and probably you will get an answer. And I think that's a real interesting concept, having an AI agent, sort of a proxy between the data and the user, who's filtering and aggregating data and giving you not the data, but the information about that.
Yeah, the metadata.
Yes, the metadata.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then you mentioned the word proxy, of course. Being an authorization nerd, I think of the ABAC-NIST architecture with the notion of the PEP, the notion of the PEP, the brain. So the proxy is a great PEP for authorization that happens.
In this case, yes, but it was not, the agent was not sort of a PDP, I would say.
Oh, no. It was, the proxy would have called out the PDP, I guess. Yes. Or were you saying the agent itself was doing control as well?
Yes, the agent was doing control. So it was like talking to a human, and he was like, no, I cannot give you access to the data, but I can answer the questions.
Nice.
Yeah. I really like the idea and the demonstration.
Okay. All right. So I've got more questions. Moving on from AI, if we look at the different identity-specific technologies or IAM-specific technologies, what is the most exciting thing you've seen so far at the conference?
Of course, AuthZEN.
AuthZEN?
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear you.
I really like the progress we are doing this project. Really looking forward to see it in the field.
Yeah. So for listeners out there, tongue twister. AuthZEN is a new working group under the helm of OpenID Foundation. And it is all about standardized interfaces to query for authorization decisions. So both Roland and I are members of the AuthZEN working group. We presented on Tuesday. We're presenting again on Friday, tomorrow. And the whole point is that, quotes, authentication is solved. So probably not fully solved, but mostly solved. Now we need to tackle authorization, and we need to have a consistent way for asking these authorization questions. And that's why I was, talking about the PEP PDP ABAP architecture. This is pretty much the AuthZEN architecture. So if you're interested, join us in the working group at OpenID. You should just Google AuthZEN, AuthZEN, or ZEN for those of you in Canada and the UK. You'll find the working group. I'm glad to hear that you think AuthZEN is the coolest. I kind of agree. I also like what they're doing in shared signals. I think combining both a runtime authorization architecture and being able to react dynamically to the evolution, like a changing situation, these are the two fundamental cornerstones of a better authorization model. That's true. Are your customers aware that it's happening? Are they following standards development, or is it so far away from them?
It's so far away from them, but I always try to talk about this with my customers. That you see, they are still doing sign or single sign-on and still busy with that. And then you come up with fine granular authorization management. You have to do this and that, and they were like, okay, maybe next year, because it scares them sometimes, because you have to take your hand at another topic.
Yep.
And authorization, to be honest, is not quite easy.
No.
So it's a complex thing, and
The way I see it is that it's technically easy. It's from a human process and stakeholder and ownership perspective, very difficult.
yes, that's true.
My image is always that you have two chairs, you're playing a game of musical chairs, and you're kind of stuck in between the two chairs, right? Like the developers on the one hand, the app owners on the other, on one hand, and the IAM team on the other. You have a secret sauce?
The secret sauce, no.
No? So we're going to have a doll for a very long time.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm relieved. Any sessions you want to go see today?
Not really, because it's going often.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, leaving because there was no dialogue tomorrow. So we are leaving early this year, unfortunately. So there are not a lot of tasks where I can attend to.
I hope you got some sunglasses, for your newfound celebrity status. They might not let you put in the right year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I go to the next line. So,
Exactly. You still go to economy, unfortunately, but great. Emmy, do you have any additional questions for our Roland guest here?
So besides AuthZEN, what session or what quote have you heard that stood out the most?
Besides AuthZEN, what's the topic that got you the most interested? Besides AI and AuthZEN, working down that line, after AuthZEN was the next topic that you followed?
at the conference or in general?
At the conference.
Good question. There are so many topics, and it's hard to get to topic. But I think AI and AuthZEN and chat signals authorization, it's interesting to me.
Okay. And outside the conference?
Outside of the conference,
Mm-hmm.
Station, what's happened some Rigas, Station Rigas?
What time did you go to bed last night? Or is that TMI?
Yeah,
2 a.m.
2 a.m. and I got up at 6.
Wow. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being here. How do you feel right now? Yeah.
Getting.
Yeah. I went to bed at 11 p.m. So
Okay. Yeah, you got enough sleep.
I got enough sleep. Yeah. Yeah. I've had very noisy neighbors for the past 2 days in my hotel room.
Okay. Glad it's not me, but I can get in sleep of 11 hours. I can run some years.
Yeah.
I will recover on the way.
They're good. Moving from the conference, I got some personal questions. What got you into IAM to begin with?
To be honest, it was my second master thesis.
Okay.
So I chose a topic which is in between of IT, as I studied IT and economics. So I had to choose a topic which is bit of IT, bit of economics. So I choose identity and access management as part of the internet control system.
Okay.
So this is building the bridge between the business and the tech, and having the reason why aren't we doing this at all? Identity and access management. So this was my first step into the industry. And after that, I had the luck to become Sebastian's first employee. And he just dropped me off at a really large customer. And I found myself being the chief architect for identity and access management at Audi for 2 years. And this was a strive learning curve, but I really liked it. Well, this got me into the industry.
Cool. What was your biggest lesson learned from that experience?
It's how you set problems. So you have to talk to people, you have to track, you have to understand the organization and they're doing, their challenges. And the bigger the organization and the architecture gets, then the more are you maintaining it.
Cool. Workforce IAM, consumer IAM, a bit of both?
In this case, so my first customer, it was a workforce identity management. Thousands of IT systems, hundred thousands of employees. So it's a huge stack, a huge architecture. Yeah.
Okay.
It was the time of my life. I wrote like 10 emails or 20 emails a day for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did less tech and more art, more conversations and stuff like that. But I really liked it.
So we should not underestimate the importance of the softer side of IAM, which may be the more critical side in a way, convincing the stakeholders, educating. And I see that as well too, like obviously specific to authorization for me, but we did education 10, 15 years ago on why you need to do authorization. We're doing that education again because the people need to know how to do authorization. They need to understand who the stakeholder is. That's a really, really big challenge.
Yeah. Why do you mean that at all? So, and in the end, it all boils down That's really important. You can't speak to managers. This is an shiny thing I wanted to go away. Have you seen David Lee's talk yesterday?
No, I missed it.
It was really cool. It was about that very topic. Don't speak to managers with tech. Always have one solution. Always try to solve one problem at a time. Speak business. Try to address a business problem, and then you will get a project.
So for the listeners out there, David Lee, also known as Identity Jedi, also runs a podcast, the Identity Jedi podcast. And he's just an all-around great, thinker, speaker. And he's got a bunch of battle scars from doing identity implementations.
And he's
a really good guy. Yeah. Awesome. Any parting words? Any final thoughts?
Not really. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me as a guest. I really like the conference. And if you're not at the Identiverse next year, it's getting bigger.
And you mentioned two things by the way at the beginning. You said Identiverse and EIC. So what's EIC for people in Europe?
Well, it's the most important identity and access management conference in Europe. Mm-hmm. So with Identiverse, I think the two are the most important conferences.
It takes place in Berlin.
It takes place in Berlin.
Yeah. So if you don't have travel budget to come all the way to Vegas, then you can always go to Berlin.
Yeah, and we had a food.
Better food, better drinks.
That's true.
And a beautiful city.
Yeah, that's true.
Great. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for getting up early.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emme. Any final words from you, Emme, before we call it a wrap?
What booth are you at? Where can people find you?
Oh, very good. I don't know my booth number. We are booth 438. But I just learned side stories since we're talking about booth numbers. Mm-hmm. One of the identity vendors here has booth 401, which we think is really, really funny, of course. We should have gone booth 401. It would have been fun.
Is it empty?
No, it's Radiant Logic. And then I'm looking for booth 404, but I just can't find it. So, yeah, come see us. Just a quick tour of where we're standing. So this is the Axiomatics and Roland, of course. There we go. Here's Sabrina, our communications manager. And this is the 4. So lots and lots of cool companies. So if you're at Identiverse, just head over to the floor. It opens in an hour, I believe, or in 30 minutes. We'll be there. Lots of cool stuff to see, lots of cool demos to see. There's even a stand where you can race a car. So, you can have lots of fun. Come check it out. And if you're not in Identiverse, give us a call. Always here.
Awesome. And then you mentioned the AuthZEN has something on tomorrow. Do you know what time or location for that?
Oh, let me look it up. Live, looking up in the app. So it is not in the printed material because it was a last minute addition. It is a readout of the work we've been doing in AuthZEN. So it's if you've seen the Tuesday session, it will be very similar to the Tuesday session. And then it is Friday, 10:15 a.m. Breakers J.
Awesome. So hopefully anyone who's at Identiverse can.
Thanks for having me.
One more thing. Outside of identity, you have another passion,
which is, yes, of course, the identity. So if you have never heard of that, we are doing beer, our own beer. It started all with we have two. So if you know the identity beer meetups, this was kind of our inspiration. So Sebastian got the idea of, identity meetups is cool, but we are Germans, hold my beer, we can make beer ourselves. So we started with this one, which is the identity beer. It's a German Helles. And we hand this out at conferences as a token of appreciation for people in the industry who shape the industry, who shape the discussions. And 2 years ago, when the AuthZEN thing started and authorization came the topic in the industry, I figured out we need a second beer, which is a authority beer. It's a bit more hoppy, but yes, these two are.
Collect them all.
Yes, collect them all. And if you are at the conference, just come and find us and grab a beer. There are just a few left.
Right. And I want to say you did a pun there. I don't know if you intended it, but you said it's a token of appreciation. Yeah. Is it SAML or is it OAuth or it's Idle?
This one is SAML.
There we go. Cool. Where's AuthZEN? Or Zachable?
next year. Next year.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emme.
Awesome. Thanks. Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of Dynamically Speaking live from Identiverse. Is the next day, and we have David with us as always. And we have a special returning guest, Gerry Gebel.
Hey, everyone.
So, how are you this lovely Friday morning in Vegas?
I don't know. It's Friday morning, the end of the conference. So we're in survival mode at this point, I think. Is that fair?
It is fair. Yeah. I'm starting to lose my voice like way deeper than usual.
Yes.
Mine's not a good sign.
Mine's gone. So
Yeah. So we're going to sign language this episode.
Okay. That should be fun.
That'll work very well for the audio only part of this. So, you both are speaking in a bit over an hour. What are you speaking about? Let's start.
Wait a minute. When is this?
At 10:15.
Today?
Are you having a moment there? Do you want to talk about it?
Today?
Yes.
All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Fine.
So I'll go over the logistics and he'll go over the content. So 10:15, Breakers J, which is that way for those of you at Identiverse. And what are we talking about, Gerry? I kind of forgot.
Well, we're doing a shortened version of the AuthZEN readout for the interop that we did for this conference. So that's super exciting.
You'll find this interesting, Emme. As you know, we had a session on Tuesday and it was a 40 or 50 minute session. I don't remember. And we had 20 alt slides plus demo. We're reusing the same material in a 20 or 25 minute session. And we're wondering how we can make it all fit.
I know. It'll be like watching YouTube on like 1.5 times.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll have to talk fast.
We can do that.
Yeah. We could do it.
Radio tobacco bought sellers in the market. You've never seen those?
No.
Like you go down the Carolinas and they'll sell tobacco leaves by the ton or whatever unit it is. And they have people who speak. It's an auction and they speak so fast you just don't notice.
All right. We need some of that today.
Tobacco?
Yes.
It's legal here.
Okay.
So what are we talking about then? You said AuthZEN. What is AuthZEN?
Well, it's an effort to standardize some of the APIs within the PSRP complex of authorization systems. And primarily we're focusing on the PEP to PDP in communications right now. So that's really shaping up. It's coming together. And I think we'll be on track for 1.0 of this spec later this year.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So this is a spec that started, for those of you who don't know, started in earnest in June of 2023, right here in Las Vegas, a couple of hotels down on the Strip, with Gerry, with a lot of individuals involved in the authorization world from a wide range of vendors. Today in the interop we did for the binary API, we had 14 different policy decision points. So that shows a big adoption, right?
It is. And then we had another interop earlier this year in March at the Gartner show in London, where we also included a number of those vendors plus 8 API gateway vendors. So it really expands the universe of vendors out there that support the standard already.
Yep. And you mentioned PSRP and PEP and PDP. So for those of you that don't know, there is an architecture in the world of authorization that we oftentimes call the PSRP architecture or the ABAC architecture. And in that you have the policy enforcement point or PEP, the policy decision point or PDP, and the bulk of AuthZEN is standardizing that interaction, like Gerry said, between PEP and PDP. And then in the architecture, we also have PIP, policy information point, right? And then we also have
the AP, administration.
Yeah,
I remember this. You're doing this with the memory issue.
That's true. Did we already say PDP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
And so, yes, policy administration point. What's interesting is that if you go look at NIST and their publications, you'll find 800-162 that you actually contributed to. You helped review. Yeah, I think you were in the acknowledgements of the spec. Don't be humble.
Well, I might have reviewed some of it, but, I didn't write.
Oh, you didn't write it? No. It is in this document. So they define the architecture and the zero trust spec that came out a few years later, 207, reuses that architecture. So it's nice to see that finally we're seeing adoption for that pattern.
Right. And you mentioned, the information point. So that's potentially the subject of a future profile, because we want to see where is the intersection of AuthZEN with some of the work that Shared Signals is doing and CAPE, continuous access evaluation protocol. So I think there's some really interesting possibilities there. And then also on the administration side, it's on our roadmap to talk about or profile how you can get a policy set from an administration system to the PDP and define an API for that. So lots more work to do, but
lots more work to do.
Yeah.
I think the shared signals piece, to me at least, is the most interesting because it's going to open the world to not just runtime authorization, but let's call it reactive, like just in time detecting something changing and therefore triggering an authorization event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we've always talked about this authorization architecture implementing real time authorization, but that still can be somewhat stale, depending on the exact scenario. So integrating with a CAPE system, will give you even more immediate updates to events that are of importance to different authorization systems.
Fresh authorization always,
right?
The freshest.
Yeah.
So that brings me to two things. Number one, the focus of the interop we did on Tuesday was not the binary API. So by the way, we kind of jumped all over. We got to mention that in the AuthZEN APIs, we're defining 3 styles of APIs. The direct API, can I do this? And you reply yes or no. The search API, hey, tell me which records I can see, and you tell me the record ID. And then the partial evaluation API, which is something that will not be part of 1.0. It's something that we're working on for the future, which is a similar question to search, but you get conditions or predicates back instead of the actual item. So these are the 3 APIs, right?
Right. And plus a discovery endpoint so that a PDP can advertise which of these different APIs that it supports. So that's similar to what? To the OIDC?
Yeah. The OpenID Connect discovery endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so today, the talk will focus on?
Well, on the search API, which is really cool.
Yep.
I think it's a pretty dynamic demo as far as demos go.
Yep.
Because you're returning the real data, as you said. We have different search parameters, if you will. We can search on subjects, on actions, and on resources,
okay.
and get back the actual data. So if you have a given user or subject and an action, you want to know, okay, what records can Alice update? This return result set will actually show you that list of records. Or if you have, say, a sensitive record and you want to know, well, who can update this record, it'll give you the actual list of users that can do that function. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Pretty interesting demo.
And it is a net new, in the world of standards, it is a net new feature. If we look at the grandfather of all authorization standards, it might well be XACML or XACML. By the way, someone in a presentation said, I don't know how to pronounce XACML, so I just say whack-a-mole, and I thought of you. I reminded me of that slide you had back in the day.
Yeah. Who is it? Hal Lockhart he was one of the original editors, I think, of XACML.
He's still there?
He's still around, right? But I think he has the authoritative definition for how do you say it.
Okay.
It's either XACML with a Z or XACML, like exactly. And there might be one other.
XOCML, just
spell it out.
Yeah. Spell it out.
It's good to know that, right?
Yeah. Because then you know what it stands for.
You do.
So the person yesterday was doing a presentation on Zero Trust and explaining how the PSRP architecture fits in there. And so he brought up whack-a-mole. Made me think of you.
Yeah. One other thing, David.
Yep.
With regard to the demo, what's really also so powerful is there's a drop-down list of which vendor's PDP you're going to send that search API to or that request.
Correct.
And so you can just toggle between them, right? You can pick Axiomatics, you get a result set. Then you can select WSO2, Cerbos or Topaz, and you get the exact same result set. It's really cool to see that. That's the real power of the interoperability we're trying to achieve here.
And I'll go further. Some of the products in the interop, I think there's 9 this time around.
Yes.
But there were 14 in the original. Some of them are policy-based, like Axiomatics. Some of them are graph-based. Some of them are ACL-based. And that's okay. It doesn't matter how you do it behind the scenes because now you have the interface to interact.
That's right. I think Amri Gazit, he describes this as, stateful PDPs versus stateless.
Yep.
And we had a nice mix of those implementations in this interop, which is, it's quite the challenge.
Yep. And speaking of stateless PDPs, so if we go back to the grandfather of standards, XACML, it is biased towards stateless PDPs, and to have the concept of a PIP. And so within XACML, there is no search API because in a way, back then they couldn't. It just didn't fit in the model. So for achieving AuthZEN search API functionality is a net new thing. This is great. This is a mini revolution in the world of authorization. And that's,
right. Well, I think it brings the capabilities of the authorization system closer to the business functionality you're trying to support.
Yep.
And so I think that's a good step forward.
Yep. It's amazing. So Gerry, switching gears for a couple seconds, you and I worked for a long time together, 10 years. I joined Axiomatics within weeks of each other.
No, David, you always remind me that you started at Axiomatics first.
Yes. I was there first. I also left first.
Well, that's true. Yeah. You were there, I guess, a few weeks before me, back in 2010.
Yeah, back in 2010.
Right.
We first met in San Francisco.
Yeah, shortly after that.
Yep.
Was that at RSA conference or later on? I think it was later on.
Maybe. Yeah. I've only been in one RSA. I'd love to go back. But anyway, so you and I, worked on authorization for the longest time. And then you switched to a company called Strata. Can you tell us what Strata is and how you're involved in AuthZEN, by the way, because you're involved in Strata and you first took the head of standards role over there and now you're overseeing all products, right?
Right. So when I first started at Strata, my main goal was to bring this new idea around a vendor neutral policy language to life. It's called IDQL or Identity Query Language. And the idea was that, there are so many different policy implementations out there or just, homegrown systems, and no way to represent that in a common neutral format. And so that was the idea behind that. And then there's also an open source project called Hexa, which is designed to translate that neutral format, IDQL, into the bespoke format of any target system. And so that's a CNCF sandbox project. There's a number of connectors or providers, as we call them, to convert IDQL to and from something like the Cedar policy language that Amazon introduced not too long ago.
Do you support the translation to Cedar already?
Yeah.
Nice. And Rego as well?
Well, there's 3 ways that we have found that we can, translate or map to different formats. One is you just mapping to a basic role or group model because there's no policy structure there, right? It's just groups and roles.
In Rego, you mean?
No.
Or in IDQL?
Just generically, right?
Okay.
But we can map that to an IDQL format.
Yep.
But there's no policy language on the role side or the group side, right? It's just a list of groups in a directory. So we can map that simple model into actual policy. The second is the full interpretation, like with Cedar. Mm-hmm. So we have full fidelity going back and forth from IDQL to Cedar and vice versa. And then the third way was when we came up with when we looked at Rego and OPA, because Rego basically is a programming language. And we briefly looked at, okay, can we make a translator that goes back and forth, and said, no, this is way beyond what we want to do. But in our research, we found some other projects that did interesting things with interpreting the input JSON capability of OPA. And what we did was we wrote a small bit of Hexa OPA code, or Hexa Rego code, that directly interprets the IDQL JSON format. So we basically ship the policy interest in the request, and the Hexa Rego code can do the evaluation. So we call this direct interpretation because it's not really translating.
Right.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you do have a Rego policy, but it's a wrapper around the native IDQL policy.
Yeah, essentially.
That's interesting.
Yeah, essentially. So that's been a really interesting project. And then a little over a year ago, I also now manage the Strata products, which is around identity orchestration. So this is, a middleware or abstraction between your applications and your identity infrastructure, primarily IDPs and attribute sources.
Yep.
That gives you a lot of flexibility to do unified single sign-on, help you rationalize your IDP inventory of products. And we introduced something really interesting last year. We have a guest series.
All right, for those of you live, we have a guest crashing the podcast. Hello, little robot.
Is this part of the NHI pavilion from the show floor?
It probably is, yeah.
All right, that's a first.
Can the vacuum robot cleaner take part in the podcast. Permit deny.
Yeah, well, it's on its own.
Yeah,
It's coming back.
this is strange.
That's all right. So anyway,
Sorry, Gerry.
that's okay. Was I saying, oh, we introduced that capability last year around identity resiliency. There's more and more focus on continuity of operations in different contexts. And so we can do that for identity. If your primary IDP fails, we can automatically switch over to an alternate because we're doing health monitoring of the environment. And since we're that abstraction in the midst, we can do that, and you can continue operating your critical business apps. Even if your primary IDP goes down.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The first part of what you do at Strata, it kind of reminds me in a way of AuthZEN, because you're bridging the different identity protocols and identity stores and providing that one single unified experience. It's quite similar to AuthZEN and providing a standardized authorization interface.
Right. Well, I guess you asked, what's the relationship with AuthZEN, right?
Yep.
Why am I doing that? And I guess it goes back a long way to when I was back at Burton Group. I did a lot of reports on standards at the time, SAML, WSFed, all the federation standards.
SAML as well?
No, I didn't do that one. Mark Didiati covered that one. But also Example. And we hosted a number of interoperability demos at the Burton Catalyst Conference for the years, right? So I was always interested in that. Actually, we hosted the first Example interop ever as well.
I'd like to say I remember that was before my time.
It was before your time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always been, I don't know, a hobby of mine or interest area of mine. And in talking with Alan Foster, actually goes back 3 years ago. We first got a meeting together here. It didn't really go anywhere until 2 years ago.
Yep.
But he also had some similar ideas that there's got to be something we can do here to promote or enable interoperability, and so that's where the interest is in me getting involved.
Yeah. Thanks. That takes me to another point, that a question that we've been asked quite a few times when we present AuthZEN, and it is, are you going to standardize the implementation, how you do authorization? Are you going to choose a policy language and that's going to be it? And the answer is
maybe. I know you say no.
You say maybe. Breaking news.
No. I think there's more to discuss there, because we did talk about earlier about if I have a policy administration interface, creating some policy in some language, and then we're going to in AuthZEN we're going to specify the API for how you distribute that to a PDP. What about if I'm supporting multiple vendor PDPs? I mean, how am I going to handle that? So I think we're going to talk in the future about, okay, how do we translate that? And that's where the open source Hexa project could come into play. But I think so part of the answer is no. We're not going to say, here's an industry single policy language that we all should support, because I just think that's a non-starter. But I do think there is some additional discussion about, okay, how do we make this practical?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And I totally agree. I had the opportunity to talk to Martin Kupinger back in right after EIC, actually, and then also Roland Baum of Gartner back in March. And they both told me similar things. They said, policy orchestration is going to be the next big deal. And that made me think of IDQL, right? So the whole idea is that PDPs are commoditized, right? You should be able to use to some degree, right? There's some subtle differences, but they're more or less commoditized. So when you go as a practitioner, when you go buy an authorization solution, a PDP, you're going to check the box that it performs well and so on and so forth, that it does do the use cases you're interested in. But then the biggest thing is really the path, the control plane, like how you do collaboration. And then what's going to happen, and we see this with our customers, at some point our customers are going to say, well, it's all fine and well that you do Alpha and Zackwell, but we also have a bit of open policy agent over there. Can you help us manage that? So yeah, I think policy orchestration, policy translation, whether through IDQL or directly, that's probably going to be a big deal. And maybe that's what we can actually recommend in AuthZEN, that translation orchestration.
Right. And I think there's another aspect to that as well. So you talked about managing a runtime authorization system or set of systems, but there's also the governance aspect of that. Governance from the perspective of validating or reviewing who has access,
and supplementing like the IGA tools and what they do, which is more user focused, if you will, but not really having the visibility into the deeper access controls of our business applications. So I think there's a lot more in that sort of governance area that we can support as well.
And perhaps the search API can be the foundation for access review and user recertification.
And just general reporting, right? In being able to support ad hoc queries that your audit team may want to have, or your CISO team may want to have available.
That takes me to another point, which is the design patterns. Early on in the life of AuthZEN, we started working on authorization design patterns. I think we need so we kind of got paused because of the API work, but we need to bring it back. We need to tell practitioners, this is how you would do authorization in this case, in that case, because there's not just one single pattern. And speaking back to governance, we need to think about what that looks like, because people are used to doing user recertification, access recertification at a sell point, at a IGA, right? But policy is a little different, or is it? Can we do the recertification, plug into an IGA product, and we're done? Do we need to do something additional? What will the standards play? Will it be through the search API? So these are some of the things that we probably need to define in the design patterns.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot going through the exercise of defining these APIs. We started working on the design patterns document early on, I think especially Alex and Eve and some of the others on the working group. And I think it was right to pause it at that time, because I think now we can go back with sort of more recent experiences and really flesh that out. Yep. And I'm losing my voice. You're going to have to solo in on the session later this morning.
I'll go super fast then. I'll go like on your slides. I'll be, Gerry would talk to this, but I don't know what it is. Just move on.
We'll make it.
One more thing I'd like to get your thoughts on. Is I've been toying with this whole idea. I probably told you this. Then I'm forgetful. So what's your name again? This idea of comprehensive pragmatic authorization, right? And I'm partly inspired by what Atul and Ian are doing as well over at Signal. It's the whole idea that the PEP PDP does not always work. You might have a SaaS that you just cannot front with a PEP. So then what do? Well, I have this idea that potentially you could do token-based authorization, where you manipulate the token, you enrich it with claims that come from a policy, or even potentially provisioning, intelligent provisioning from the same policy, right? You start with the same alpha, DACL, Cedar policy, and then you convert it into whatever the target system understands. What's your take on that?
Well, I think this is also where the search mechanisms really come into the forefront.
Yep.
Because you talk about token enrichment, or just minting that accurate token for that session for that user. Mm-hmm. If we do that based on policy, then I think that authorization token, if you will, is more precise, and you can sort of control access from the outside, right? Yep. Because, like you said, it's a black box basically. That app is not available to you. Yep. So I think those kinds of scenarios are really where the search APIs will shine, I think.
Yeah. It's awesome. Oh, absolutely. Yep. It does. I think they're a good way to, and this is where we might realize we need another search API that is focused on claims generation, for instance. We'll see.
Well, I think we talked about whether that's just a profile, not necessarily an API, or do you think it's a separate API?
So let's see if profile is enough. But I wonder whether we need to be able to ask more pointed questions in the search API that are not supported by the existing interface.
I understand that. But yeah, because on the working group, we did talk about having some, whether it's a profile or a different API for IDPs, right? For identity providers who are the primary minters or enhancers of those tokens, so that they can be part of the AuthZEN universe as well. And also, that would help us to expose that policy, from the IDP, because that's all proprietary. I don't know that there's any policy language that any of them support. Is that right?
I don't think so. I mean, those IDPs that do have policy language support, they have it in other products. I'm thinking of Ping, for instance. They have Ping authorized, but it's not the IDP side of Ping. Like Microsoft have conditional access policy, but it's not an authorization language. So
I think it furthers that idea of enhancing the governance of identity infrastructure.
Yep. But to go back to the claims generation, I think that the sort of question we'd want to ask is, oh, tell me what Alice can do. So the only thing we know is Alice, but we don't know the resource type. So we need a broader question than just the one we have. Because right now in AuthZEN, we only have one unknown and 2 set items.
Right. Otherwise, we'd have to issue multiple API calls to get the full set.
But maybe that's the pattern. Maybe that's the way.
Right.
Okay. We'll have to see.
More to come.
More to come. So that will be the next wave for us in the AuthZEN world, right? One is get the IDPs on board, which they're more or less are already on board indirectly, because a lot of the people we work with work at IDP companies.
Right.
So that's one thing. The other thing is getting SaaS and COTS on board, telling, the workdays of this world, hey, it's time to actually let your customers externalize authorization to a PDP through AuthZEN so that it's workable. The OAuth moment of authorization, right? So what can people do to help us?
Yeah, I think that's an area where, those of you that are in customer enterprise environments, when you're putting out your RFPs for new products, new capabilities, that's where you can say, well, we need support for AuthZEN in these scenarios. And I think that's where the demand really can be most powerful. It's one thing for, the vendors that are in identity to support these APIs, but it's really more beneficial if the broader application world is adopting these APIs.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's going to be the proof in the pudding, right? When you see adoption.
Yes,
indeed. Great. Thanks.
That's it.
Yeah. We can go on and on and on. What are your hobbies? What do you do when you don't talk about authorization?
Or, I do lots of things like woodworking, sourdough baking, pizza making, all those kinds of things. Yeah.
Amongst other things, Gerry's quite the accomplished chef. So every time I go to, I haven't been to your place in ages because we live so far apart. Yeah. The last time we had quite a feast.
That was awesome. Yeah, I think over Thanksgiving weekend. He's right. You and your wife Dell.
Yep.
That was amazing.
I think we got snowed in. Or not Arizona, not the Arizona site. Chicago got snowed in, so we were delayed. We couldn't go home.
That's right. That's okay though.
The truth is, I called the airline. I was like, "Do whatever it takes. We're seeing one extra day."
That's awesome. Well, thanks for having me again.
You bet. Thanks.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Emmy. Any final words, Emmy? Any questions for Gerry? Anything you want to ask the legend?
Well, I mean, besides getting all the dirt on you.
Wow. Oh wow. Okay, I'm gonna walk myself out.
Awesome. Thank you both.
All right. And before we cut it short, so our session is at 10:15, Breakers J. And before that, I need to look it up. Alex Babineau is also going to be talking about authorization. So let me pull up the details. He needs all the hecklers he can get.
Well, also, Alex Olivier has a session.
During hours.
Yeah.
That's
what's one that we'll give him the same room, right? Breakers J.
Oh, yeah. So Alex Olivier, Breakers J. So Alex Olivier, who's one of the founders of Cerbos and one of the members of the AuthZEN working group. And so let me get you the details for these 2 sessions. This is where you do tap dancing.
Right.
All right. So Mendeley Bay H for Alex Babineau's presentation at 9:40 on the hidden risks of GraphQL. And the rise of WASM embeddable policy decision points, transforming enterprise authorization. That's with Mike Schwartz of Glue and Alex Olivier at Cerbos in Breakers L. That's going to be interesting, actually. It's just maybe one final never stop. For the longest time, we've said in the PSRP architecture that you need to do authorization on the server side, which is true. Always do server-side validation. It's like one of the basic principles of OWASP. What Alex Olivier is saying is, yes, but it shouldn't stop you from doing some basic validation on the front end. And that's more what I sometimes call usability or safety, or makes safety sound like it's something you can do optionally. Personalization, yeah. So it brings authorization closer to the user, not for the sake of final enforcement, but for the sake of delivering an experience that corresponds to what the user is looking for. So really cool idea.
Yeah, it's just also demonstrate the amazing range of sessions here at Identiverse this week, and it's always great to see all that and that they're recorded. So
yes,
just can't be
just the audio.
Right. But you can't be on all the sessions that you want to. So it's great to go back and listen to those afterwards.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning into this special live episode of Dynamically Speaking from Identiverse. You can find Roland's and Gerry's information in our podcast description. And if you didn't get a chance to meet up with our team at Identiverse, you can set up a call with our solution experts through the Axiomatics website. Also, our latest edition of the State of Authorization Playbook is now out and can be downloaded from our website. The guide now includes sections on SAP, REG, runtime authorization, enforcement strategies covering PEP PDP architecture, entitlement and policy provisioning, as well as zero standing privileges and more. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Dynamically Speaking. Stay tuned for our next one, and in the meantime, check the show notes and connect with us on LinkedIn and YouTube. And visit us at axiomatics.com to learn more about our authorization solution.